Hi, everybody. Court just finished up for the day in the Anthony Todt trial. We will have closings in the morning and maybe a verdict by tomorrow afternoon. I do not think it's going to take this jury very long. I already did the first part today, which was the direct with his attorneys. As Anthony was on the stand, he was sad and tearful. As soon as the prosecution started up, that all changed. Let's talk about it in a second. But first, we want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Too Cool T-shirt quilts. You can go to toocooltshirtquilts.com/pretty lies and alibis. They'll know we sent you. All right. So big demeanor change for Tony. Not sure if it's Tony or Anthony that he went by, but I'm just going to say Anthony. So the first question was, what was Megan's medical conditions in 2019? And he starts naming all those off. And then they asked, did it make her frail? And Anthony said, well, frail is a subjective term. He said her medical condition made it hard to walk, but she hit it well. They asked how she was walking the day of the murders, and he said fine. And she said the light had enabled her to do so. He said she would boil mushrooms and take stuff he didn't understand, which was part of this alternative therapy that she discovered apparently after getting her yoga degree and looking into the Hindu religions. Then they talk about when she was diagnosed with Lyme disease and asked how long it was after she was diagnosed that she started exhibiting symptoms. He said he didn't know her then. Apparently, she was diagnosed as a teenager. And then he said, then again in 2011. So the prosecutor wanted to know, was she diagnosed as a teenager or in 2011? And he said, the jury is still out. Allow me to finish. Um, so the prosecutor just kind of moved on and said from 2011 to 2019, Megan was suffering. And he said off and on, she had pain, breathing issues, and heart issues. She was suffering until the morning she murdered the kids, according to him. He said that he worked on her constantly, doing things I guess a physical therapist would do to alleviate symptoms. She had an appointment with a medical professional, but canceled it, saying there was no hope. This is all according to Anthony, by the way. I don't believe it a bit. Um, he asked if care or she asked, I'm sorry, the prosecutor asked if Megan was the primary caregiver during the week. And he said yes. He still had that practice in Connecticut. And she asked if he would typically be gone all week. And he said, as long as her health allowed. And sometimes he would land up in Connecticut and get a call from their son saying that she was bad. And then he would get on the next plane to go home. So the prosecutor asked, when you say bad, are you talking about physical or mental? And he said both. He said she ripped shelves off the wall. She would break dishes. She wasn't able to get out of bed sometimes. He found out the oldest was having to prepare meals for the other kids and that kind of thing. He was very combative really from the get-go, and several times the prosecutor would object and say he was non-responsive. The judge would just tell her to ask another question. Every time he turned to the jury, he would wipe his eyes and turn back to the prosecutor. So she asked the day of the murders, where were you coming home from? And he said he had decided with Megan the night before that he would go to the condo that they owned and do maintenance and also put together Zoe's bicycle that was meant for her Christmas gift. And he said he went after dinner. And there was a lot of back and forth about when did you guys have dinner? And he said, I don't know. And it took like 3 minutes to get that out of him. He said he realized that the boys allegedly had not put his tools inside the car, so he walked back to the house and played basketball with his boys for about an hour to an hour and a half. And he said somebody told him never to pass up an opportunity to play with his kids because there'll be a day where they won't want to play. After they played basketball, Megan was tired, and he said they had been getting over a stomach bug and it was time to go to bed. He corrected himself, though. He said they had been getting over, it sounded like he was going to say Christmas, and then he said stomach bug. He said he told the boys to remind Megan that he would be at the condo or sleeping in that above the garage apartment that was on their property there. He said that he would the reason he didn't stay home and do the opportunity he wanted to take the opportunity to do these chores at the condos, and that Megan didn't wanna be woken up by him if he came home late, so that's why he said he planned on spending the night out, but he said he realized he didn't have a phone charger. So he got in the van to charge the phone, and according to him, he fell asleep and only woke up when the sun came up. He said he was never inside that condo, and he said he didn't wanna be in the doghouse with Megan, with her waking up and him not being there to do these physical therapy treatments he says he was doing on her. He said he walked to the house the next morning and goes in the back door and goes to the bathroom downstairs. He said he sees everything on the table, and the prosecution says, "Earlier you testified you went upstairs to use the bathroom." He said he testified he went to the bathroom and then went upstairs to meet Megan. So she asked if the doors to the library were open or closed. We catch him in a little lie later with this, but he said he didn't see. He said he had to go to the bathroom, and the prosecution says, "You didn't see if the door was open or shut. It's right by where you say you came in." At this point, Anthony points to, like, the back of the courtroom, my hair is sticking up, and says, "Ma'am, do you see that man right there?" And points, and the prosecutor says, "You don't ask me questions, I ask you the questions." It's funny to watch him trying to keep his composure. He would shift in his seat, or he would kinda, like, jerk his shoulders just in a very cocky way. You could tell he really wanted to explode on this prosecutor. He said he was asked about Megan's demeanor while she's standing at the top of the stairs, and he said he looks at her with tears in her eyes and says, "You're alive." He said she was wearing a shirt of his and a pair of pants. He didn't know at that point if she had injuries. He said next he goes into the bedroom and they talk, and that she told him what she had done, and he goes to the master bathroom and pukes. He couldn't say where she was at that time. The prosecutor kept asking, "Where was Megan during all this?" And he would say, "She's within voice of me." Is she behind me? He said he couldn't say a distance. He said after the bathroom, he went into the master bedroom and then back into the hall into Zoe's room because Megan said the kids were dead. And he said, "Zoe's my little angel, so I went to her room first." He said she had a pillow on her face, trigger warning, by the way. She had a pillow on her face and covers on top of her, and she was laying on a mattress on the floor. According to him, he said he uncovered her face, and Megan said she told him she stabbed the kids, and he said he looked for any signs of life and blood but didn't see any. He said he asked Megan, "I thought you stabbed her," and Megan said, "I thought I did, but it bounced off of her." He said after he left Zoe's room, he went into the bathroom and got a washcloth. He said her mouth and her eyes were open and she looked uncomfortable, and he said this is exactly what he said, "It's his demeanor to put his kids to rest. Don't ask me why. I tried to close her eyes." He said at this point, Megan's following him. The prosecutor asked, "Did you have your phone with you?" And she said, "Hey, you charged it the night before." He said, "Little did I know this wasn't a direct charger. Isn't that convenient?" He said, "I had to have the car on." And he also found out that the phone that he had was not active. Um, the prosecutor asks about other phones in the house, and he said that Megan had hid them and refused to tell him where they were. Um, the prosecutor asked what time of day was it, and Tony said the sun was up. I don't know what time of day it was. He said after he was finished in Zoe's room, Megan wanted to talk, and she wanted to convince him to believe in what she was doing. And he said he pushed her out of the way and went into Alex's room, and then eventually found Tyler in the library. He said Alec was on his back, pillow over his head, covers up, and there was blood on him. He said he pulled back the blankets and saw that Alec had blood on his shirt. He wanted to see if they were alive and what happened, and he said when he realized they were dead, he did the same thing with Alec with the washcloth. He said a normal father thing is to relax their head. He then goes to Tyler and opens up the door. So if you remember, he couldn't there was this whole thing, was the door open? So he says he goes to Tyler and opens the door, and the prosecution caught that and said, "Well, you're saying now you didn't know." And he said, I later found that out, yes, that the door was closed. He said the couch is a pull-out couch, and he's sleeping on that. Tyler is on his back, found the same way that Alec was, and he saw blood. Did the same thing with these washcloths. He said that at this point, Megan is behind him at the door, pleading with him to talk. He said she had a metal cup in her hand and she was drinking something. So he said after he was finished with Tyler downstairs, they went into the master bedroom, him and Megan, and he told her she needed help and that he would take full responsibility for what happened if she went to the hospital. But she needed to tell him where she hid the phones, and she wouldn't. He also said he saw a Benadryl bottle and grabbed it and threw it away in the bathroom, which to me, that's just an excuse for why his fingerprints might be on there. That's just kind of where my mind went. He said he was looking for phones at this point, and as he walks out of the bathroom, he hears a sound, and he said it sounded like if you rub a balloon, and he looks to see Megan stabbing herself on the stomach. He said she was laying on her back on the bed and had both hands on the knife. He said he stood there in shock and asked what she was doing, and she said she was doing what she was doing to the boys, trying to hit her artery in her abdomen. So the prosecution asked, "Did you go for help?" And he said that Megan asked him not to leave her because she didn't leave the boys. So the prosecutor asks, "After Megan dies, what do you do?" And he said, "We skipped a lot of facts. Do you want to go through it?" And the prosecutor repeats, "What did you do after Megan died?" And he said he opened the window to yell for help and that she had a weird sound coming from her mouth. So he wipes her mouth off with the pillow and starts CPR. So the prosecutor asks, how many times did she stab herself? And he said after the first stab, he pleaded with her to let him get phones to call for help. He said that their neighbors are snowbirds and are never home, and he didn't want to leave her to go get help in case she died while he was gone. So he pleaded with her to let him get help, and she said, "I want to be with my kids." So he said he leaves, but then there's an objection, and he doesn't elaborate on what he did when he left or supposedly left. This is all hogwash, guys. Um, After he dies, he said he yells out the front window, "Help, 202, please." He hears the breathing and he says there's no heartbeat, and he says they never went over in CPR class what to do. That's the whole point of CPR class, dude. They tell you what to do when somebody doesn't have a heartbeat. She asked what he did the rest of the day, and he said he broke down. "Don't ask me how long. I was confused. I couldn't help my wife pass. I was a failure. I wasn't there with my kids when they died. I condemned myself to death." So again, she says, "What did you do?" He says he sat and cried, and he said after receiving the receipt here, and he points up to where the court monitor is, he said, "I must have decided I would go get a gun," which was a pellet gun. She asked if he tried to buy a shotgun, and he said a handgun. He said he never had a gun before and didn't know there was a waiting period, like 3 days. So the prosecutor said, "Are you aware the wait doesn't apply to a shotgun?" And he said, "Ma'am, I don't know." So she asks if on December the 18th, if at that point everybody was dead. Were they alive for the awards banquet at school? And he said yes, because the boys played in that recital. She asked, "How soon after they died did you go to academy?" He said, "I don't know. The sun was up." That was kind of, he said that several times as far as in relation to at what point, at what time. The sun was up. That was kind of his go to answer. She asked, "Did you go anywhere besides academy between that day and January 13th?" He said he went to CVS for Benadryl 2 times. He's This was so stupid. He said Walgreens once to get wall dry, but he said it was disgusting, so he didn't go back, which if you have a suicide pact, you're not gonna care how the wall dry tastes, dude. He said he picked up food one night at Publix, and then she asked, "Did you go to Sarasota?" Nope. "Did you leave your phone at a Starbucks in Sarasota?" He said, "I didn't go to Sarasota." She said, "You didn't go to the beach in Sarasota?" And he said, "No." So she says, "You saw the interview yesterday that they played in court." And he says, "Yes, they tell me I spoke to him more than once." He said the last thing he remembers is falling down the stairs, and he woke up in jail thinking that he was in purgatory. And the prosecutor said, "You discussed a lot of info on the January 15th interview." And he said, "Yes. You discussed health conditions. You also spoke about various trips to Academy, and you went there to purchase a longer knife. And you also talked about the note that was left that you printed after her death. You testified today that wasn't true." At this point, Anthony says, "Let me correct the facts. The initial note I did not print out. The note I found in my pocket after I peed myself in the garage thinking I was drinking coffee, but it was actually motor oil. I found the note Megan wrote in my pocket that she had left." And he said, "On that note, which I essentially didn't read, she said we did this as a family and where she wanted to get her ashes placed after her death. At the bottom, it says, 'Tony, I love you forever. Please forgive me.'" So the prosecutor asks, "What did you do with the note?" He said he took it out of his urine stained pants and retyped it because he wanted his family that was alive to keep the knowledge we were a family unit and to let them know Megan's last wishes about her ashes. So he said the note was not handwritten, it was typed, and he put it in the fan box in the kitchen. And the reason he said he retyped it is because the suicide note had errors in it and he wanted to edit it. You can't make this stuff up, guys, really. Oh my gosh. This is might be the craziest defendant I've ever seen take the stand, and maybe this could top Jodi Arias. It's close. He said the note was found after he woke up from a suicide attempt sometime after Christmas, and he was wearing black shorts. He gave it to, and then he kind of goes off here. He says he gave it to his mother who was there in the green chair to read. And the prosecutor's like, "Wait, your mother was there?" And he said, "Yeah, my father in law who died in 2002 and his dead aunt." The prosecutor said, "You described in detail how you killed your kids and you said you began with Zoe. So you're saying now you never had a suicide pact?" And he said they did not. He said, "People believe they're Hitler." And then she asked, "Did you go to Quora.com?" And he said, "Yes." She asked if he Googled different knife techniques, and he said he found the info on Megan's phone and then looked up ways to kill himself. When asked if they watched videos about the afterlife, he said that Megan was obsessed with aliens and UFOs, and they watched a lot of that stuff. And she asks, "Everything you told detectives is not true, yes or no?" And he says no. Um, she says the multiple times you spoke to detectives and said you rolled over on Zoe until she suffocated. Tony asks, "Is this a yes or no question?" And he says, "Yes, he lied." And you say today Megan did it. And Tony says Megan killed Zoe. You told them multiple times after Zoe you killed Alec and Megan took part and held his legs while you suffocated him. You're saying that's not true? And Anthony says, "My testimony is Megan killed her kids and herself." And note how he says her kids. Megan killed her kids. I put that in all caps because that stuck out to me. Those are his kids too. You saw the video where I said things that weren't correct. So he was kind of using that to his advantage, saying, "Well, the medical examiner says it couldn't have happened this way," even though in the video, if you remember, he insisted that he stabbed the boys while they were alive. He said the video is a sickly and emotionally disturbed version of me. At this point, he just turns to the jury and looks at them and then turns back. And then the prosecutor said you put a pillow over her head until she suffocated." And he said, "That's what the video shows." She goes through all these different things he said about killing the kids. That's what the video shows. The last question, when was Tyler's birthday? And he said it was on December 30th. She asks, "Do you remember cashing a check that was meant for Tyler's birthday?" He said no. Redirect, defense gets up, one question. "Who killed your family?" He said, "My wife killed the kids." "And you were not involved?" And he said, "No." As he's stepping down, it looks to me like he says a prayer. He kind of stops, closes his eyes, which kind of would be sort of facing the jury, and gets down. So the defense again asks for an acquittal. It's denied. The judge sent the jury home for the rest of today. They're going to hammer out jury instructions today. Jury comes back 10 a.m. tomorrow. They'll instruct the jury, do closings. They get the case. I say less than an hour before we have a verdict tomorrow. I think we have a verdict maybe by this time. Easy. crazy case, you guys. It really went from 0 to 60 today. But, man, I mean, they just look, here's the thing. Maybe the state, this was totally a game plan. They could spend another week having witnesses come up subject to cross exam, or hey, let's just put him on the stand. He's going to give him enough rope. I think maybe it worked. We shall see, but well played by the prosecution if that was their intent, because I think it worked. All right, guys, if you're a regular watcher, we'll be back tonight with more texts from Lori and Zulema. Keep an eye on those portals to see if anything is posted about Lori's case. As far as we know, she has not been moved back to the jail. But if anything changes, we will reach out and let you know on social media. And until tonight, have a good afternoon.